Imagine, imagine handing an X-ray to like the world's most brilliant oncologist, and after this incredibly careful examination, they tell you that you're completely healthy.
Right, a totally clean bill of health.
Exactly. But then you hand that exact same X-ray to a machine, and within, a fraction of a second, it flags this microscopic cluster of cells that the human eye is literally biologically incapable of seeing.
Wow.
Yeah, it catches the anomaly years before it becomes an actual problem. And the crazy thing is, that is no longer a sci-fi thought experiment. Based on the updates crossing our desks today, that is the current reality of clinical trials.
It's just wild. I mean, it forces a complete reevaluation of what we even consider a thorough medical exam. You know,
Right.
when human biology is your bottleneck for perception, the introduction of a machine that simply doesn't have those biological limits, it just completely shatters the old diagnostic paradigm.
It really does. So welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are jumping straight into a highly concentrated snapshot of the current landscape. We're looking at an AI News Daily Digest dated today, April 26th, 2026.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly. And instead of drowning in, the endless flood of minor tech updates that we always see, our mission today is to pull three massive developments from this feed and really map the connective tissue between them.
And I think the overarching theme here is just impossible to ignore.
Oh, absolutely.
We're watching artificial intelligence simultaneously rewrite the rules of our physical survival, fracture our global regulatory landscape, and then on top of that, fundamentally alter how we manufacture cultural escapism.
Yeah, it's hitting everything.
Right. We are looking at a massive infrastructure shift that's basically hitting every vital layer of the human experience.
So let's start with that first part, the physical survival piece, because this new AI-powered diagnostic tool that's moving into clinical trials right now is just staggering.
It really is.
We are talking about utilizing deep learning to completely transform cancer detection. It's sifting through these vast global data sets of medical images with an accuracy rate that is basically making the entire medical community hold its breath.
Right. Because it is identifying these early stage markers that simply don't register to human vision at all.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this for a second. It's kind of like having a superpowered medical detective that possesses, the combined visual memory of every scan ever taken in human history.
That's a great way to put it. And to really understand the leap here, we have to look at the mechanics of what this deep learning system is actually doing under the hood.
Right, because it's not just comparing two pictures.
Exactly. We aren't dealing with a simple image matching program here. We are talking about convolutional neural networks.
Okay.
So picture the analysis happening in layers. The first layer of the AI looks at a scan, and it only looks for basic edges, just lines.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. Then the next layer takes those edges and looks for shapes. And the next one looks for textures. By the time you get to, say, the 50th or 100th layer, the system is identifying pixel density variations so subtle. I mean, they correlate with a tumor that won't even physically manifest for another 3 years.
That is just mind-blowing. Let me throw an analogy at that to make sure, that you and I are visualizing this perfectly for everyone.
Yeah, go for it.
It's like looking at a million of those pointillist paintings.
Oh, right. The ones made of tiny dots.
Exactly. So a human standing in the museum, we see the beautiful landscape, the trees, the river, we see the big picture.
The whole scene.
Right. But the AI, it essentially squints, zooms way into the canvas, and realizes that in 99% of the paintings, a specific mathematically identical cluster of 3 blue dots always appears in the bottom left corner right before the artist paints a storm.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes.
Because the human brain just isn't wired to track a billion individual dots across a million paintings,
It captures the mechanism perfectly. I mean, what's fascinating here is that the AI isn't smarter in a cognitive sense. Its perception is just completely untethered from biological fatigue and constraint.
It doesn't get tired.
Exactly. A human radiologist at the end of a 14-hour shift is fighting eye strain, cognitive load, the literal limits of the human retina. But the machine analyzes its millionth scan with the exact same precision as its first. And while this initial rollout is obviously focused on cancer detection, the architecture of the system means this predictive capability is completely agnostic.
Meaning it could look for anything.
Right. It can be pointed at neurological scans for Alzheimer's or cardiovascular imaging for microblockages. The implications are global.
Which is, of course, where my brain immediately goes to the practical reality of the hospital room. Because Invisible to the human eye is a miraculous phrase when it saves your life, right?
Sure.
But it also creates a massive crisis of trust. I mean,
Yeah.
if the AI flags a scan and the world-class doctor looks at that exact same scan and sees absolutely nothing.
Who makes the call?
Exactly. Who makes the call? Are we just turning our most highly trained medical professionals into rubber stamps for an algorithm that they can't even double check?
And that right there is the exact tension keeping hospital administrators awake at night right now. The shift is basically moving the physician from the role of primary diagnostician to the role of an auditor.
An auditor who can't see the ledger.
Right. How do you audit a system that sees things you physically can't? So the medical community is having to develop an entirely new framework for validation.
Like what?
Well, one that involves secondary biochemical testing to verify the algorithm's predictions, instead of just solely relying on human visual confirmation.
That makes sense. But, to even get to that level of predictive power, to train an AI to spot those 3 blue dots across a million paintings, that system had to be fed millions of patient scans from all over the planet.
Oh, the data appetite is ravenous.
Right. But the moment you start scraping medical data from hospitals in, say, Tokyo, London, and Sao Paulo, just to build a single diagnostic tool, you immediately run headfirst into a massive geopolitical wall. Like, whose privacy laws apply to that global data?
And that data friction is actually the perfect bridge into the second major development from today's digest.
Yeah, let's pivot to that.
Because we are moving from the hospital wing straight to the policy war room. A major, highly influential think tank has literally just dropped a comprehensive report demanding immediate, binding global cooperation on AI ethics and standards.
And the urgency in this report is palpable. I mean, the think tank is throwing up flares about transparency, accountability, and fairness.
Yeah, they're not holding back.
No, they're pointing to the pervasive integration of these systems into everyday life, from deciding who gets a mortgage, to filtering job applications, to, well, as we just discussed, diagnosing terminal illness.
It's everywhere.
And their proposed solution, the creation of a unified international oversight body to mandate baseline standards across the entire globe.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the core argument they're making is that AI development is suffering from what economists call regulatory arbitrage.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, technology companies are incredibly agile, right? So if the European Union passes these draconian laws on data privacy and algorithmic transparency, a developer will simply pack up their servers and move their operations to a jurisdiction with absolutely no oversight.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they train their powerful, potentially flawed models in a regulatory vacuum and then just sell the finished product back to the heavily regulated countries anyway, because algorithms don't respect national borders.
Okay, let me push back on that for a second, because my central alarm bells are ringing so loudly I can barely hear the think tank's proposal.
Fair enough. Let's hear it.
So what does this all actually mean for us? Because an international oversight body sounds phenomenal on a glossy PDF report. But realistically, getting the whole world to agree on what fairness looks like seems nearly impossible. How do you regulate something that evolves faster than governments can draft laws? Like, if a rogue nation or a massive tech conglomerate decides to build an unregulated system, a strongly worded resolution from a global committee isn't going to literally unplug their server farms.
Yeah.
What is the actual enforcement mechanism here?
It's the critical flaw in almost every utopian tech policy, right? You cannot regulate math with a gavel.
Exactly.
But the think tank's framework doesn't actually rely on police knocking down doors at data centers. It relies on economic choke points.
Okay, color me intrigued. How does that work?
The proposal suggests restricting access to the global supply chain of microchips or cutting off access to international data pools for any entity that refuses to submit their algorithms to third-party audits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you want the hardware to build the AI or the global market to sell the AI, you have to play by the international baseline rules regarding transparency.
So it's less about a global AI police force and more about creating this exclusive club where the cost of not being a member just completely destroys your business model.
Precisely the strategy. And this gets to the heart of why the report focuses so heavily on fairness and bias. The think tank is basically trying to solve a pipeline problem.
Meaning the data going in.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's go back to our medical AI for a second. If the global data set used to train that life-saving algorithm is heavily skewed, let's say it disproportionately contains scans from one specific demographic just because that demographic has better access to healthcare,
Right.
then the AI will be incredibly accurate for that group and dangerously inaccurate for everyone else.
It's the classic garbage in, garbage out problem, but weaponized on a global scale.
Exactly. And the tech companies actually recognize this.
Mm-hmm.
A biased AI is a defective product.
Bad for business.
Exactly. When a defective product causes harm in finance or healthcare, the resulting societal backlash and the subsequent sledgehammer of reactionary government regulation is catastrophic for their bottom line.
So they want the rules.
Yeah, the push for an international standard is partially driven by the industry's own desire to have clear, predictable rules of the road before a major catastrophe burns public trust to the ground.
They need a baseline of trust so the technology can be deployed without sparking a panic. I mean, we are spending massive amounts of intellectual and political capital trying to build guardrails around this predictive power because the stakes are so visceral.
Life and death.
Literally. We are talking about terminal illness and global economic fairness. But let's flip the script completely for this last part.
Let's do it.
What happens when you take that exact same predictive engine, that ability to sift through millions of data points and find invisible patterns, and you point it directly at our dopamine receptors?
We transition from predicting cellular decay to predicting cultural desire. We move to Hollywood.
Yes, and this is where the digest gets really wild today. The final development outlines how major Hollywood studios are fully integrating machine learning algorithms to predict box office hits.
It's fascinating.
And we are not talking about some studio executive asking a chatbot for a movie idea. The studios are feeding decades of granular film release, data ticket sales, demographic breakdowns, seasonal trends, social media sentiment into these models.
Right.
They use it to mathematically forecast the financial success of a film before a single camera even rolls.
It completely upends the traditional greenlighting process. I
Yeah.
mean, historically, Hollywood has operated on a mix of experience, market research, and a heavy dose of gut instinct.
The magic of the movies.
Right. An executive reads a script and just feels the potential.
Mm-hmm.
But now they run the script through an algorithm that analyzes the pacing, the density of action sequences, the emotional sentiment of the dialogue.
Wow.
And it compares all of that against a historical database of every movie ever made to calculate a literal probability of return on investment.
They are literally mapping the hero's journey on a spreadsheet. And it goes beyond just the green light, right?
Yeah.
The source highlights that these models are dictating marketing strategies with surgical precision.
Oh, absolutely.
They are testing variations of a trailer in real time, figuring out exactly which demographic needs to see which 2-second clip of an explosion to maximize weekend ticket sales. They're optimizing the release window down to the hour.
It's all optimized.
And furthermore, the AI is moving from the boardroom directly into the writer's room. It's assisting with plot structures and generating dialogue options.
And this is the frontier where the capability of the technology collides violently with the philosophy of art.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, where I have a massive problem with this.
I thought you might.
And I'm sure anyone listening right now who actually loves movies is screaming the same thing.
Let's hear the theory.
Okay, machine learning, by its very definition, trains entirely on past data. It only knows what has already happened. So if an algorithm is telling studios what will make a hit based solely on past data, do we risk putting storytelling on autopilot?
That's the fear.
Are we just going to get the same recycled plots? I mean, you optimize yourself into a corner of total homogenization.
The algorithm is inherently conservative. It hates risk.
Exactly. If you fed the script for, like, a bizarre genre-bending masterpiece into this machine 20 years ago, the AI would likely flag it as a massive financial risk.
Because it doesn't look like what worked yesterday.
Right, because it doesn't match the historical pattern of a safe, profitable, romantic comedy. Aren't we just guaranteeing a future where every movie is a perfectly structured, totally soulless product?
Look, the fear of the algorithmic sequel machine is incredibly valid. If a studio blindly follows the predictive output, you achieve absolute cultural stagnation.
Total boredom.
Yes, but the digest offers a fascinating counter-perspective from within the industry itself. The filmmakers driving this aren't treating the AI as a creative director. They are treating it as a collaborator.
Okay, explain that. What do you mean?
They're using the predictive analytics not to dictate the story, but to handle the friction of the process.
Handling the friction.
Yeah, think about the mechanics of writing and producing. A human writer knows the emotional truth they want to convey in a scene, but they might struggle with, say, the pacing of the third act.
Yeah.
So they feed the draft to the AI, And the AI flags that the dialogue-to-action ratio is dipping below the threshold that usually keeps modern audiences engaged. The AI doesn't write the emotional climax. It just tells the writer they need to pick up the pace. It's a hyper-advanced sounding board.
Oh, I see. So it's like an infinitely fast research assistant that has memorized the structural DNA of every screenplay ever written, allowing the human to focus entirely on the soul of the dialogue.
That's the ideal synergy. And the broader implication mentioned in the source is that this integration might actually democratize the entire medium.
Really? How so?
Well, consider an independent filmmaker shooting a movie in their garage. Historically, they couldn't compete with a major studio because they couldn't afford a $50 million marketing campaign or an army of visual effects artists.
Right, the barrier to entry was huge.
Yeah. But now, they have access to the exact same predictive marketing tools and generative special effects engines that the massive studios do.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
Right. When the cost of technical execution plummets and the ability to find your specific niche audience becomes mathematically precise, that financial barrier to entry shatters.
That's incredible.
You might actually see an explosion of bizarre, highly original, fiercely independent art because the AI allows the creator to bypass the traditional studio gatekeepers entirely. It forces us to question where the actual art lives. Is the art in the physical labor of animating the special effect, or is it in the curation of the original idea?
Okay, that completely flips my homogenization theory on its head.
It's a paradox, right?
Yeah. The major studios might use the AI to create the safest, most generic blockbusters possible, while independent creators use the exact same algorithm to build wildly experimental films and deliver them directly to the exact 10,000 people on Earth who want to see them.
It creates a bifurcated cultural landscape. The algorithm just serves whatever intent the human brings to it.
Which perfectly brings us to the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive. I mean, we set out to analyze a single daily digest from April 26, 2026.
Just today's news.
Right, and by looking closely at just 3 seemingly unrelated updates, the entire scope of this paradigm shift becomes clear. We've seen AI move from finding microscopic cancer cells hidden deep within our biology to prompting international regulatory treaties trying to govern data, all the way to co-writing the next blockbuster.
And if there's a singular thread to pull from these sources today, it is that we must stop viewing AI as a technology story.
It's bigger than that.
Way bigger.
Yeah.
It is not a gadget or a discrete piece of software you can choose to ignore. It is the new foundational infrastructure.
Yeah.
We are basically building an invisible layer of pattern recognition over every aspect of human civilization.
Yeah.
It is filtering our biology, it is forcing the evolution of our laws, and it is curating our art.
It is the lens through which the modern world is now being processed. And that reality actually leads me to a final thought that I want to leave with you, our listener, to ponder today.
It's a big one.
Think about the last time you blindly trusted a movie recommendation on your streaming app or a suggested route on your GPS. You yielded to the algorithm because it saw a pattern you couldn't.
We surrender to the convenience of the prediction.
We do, constantly. Now scale that up. We've established today that AI is incredibly gifted at recognizing invisible patterns.
The 3 blue dots.
Exactly. If these systems can predict the invisible patterns in our biology to cure us and predict the patterns in our history to entertain us, what happens when AI starts predicting the massive societal changes that we humans think we are deciding?
That is the threshold between a tool and an architect.
Right. Are these algorithms just predicting our future culture, or are they starting to program it? It's definitely something to think about the next time a perfectly timed, incredibly poignant piece of media lands on your feed. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking these massive shifts with you. Catch you next time.